Hi. How are y'all?
Maybe them teaming up is not a good thing.
How are y'all? Please tell me you're doing good. We just went out to eat. How are y'all?
Think big and play small with the massive yet miniature world of Micro Machines. Perfectly proportioned vehicles with daring to build designs that are supremely small but sports of serious speed. A colossal collection of cars of all kinds. Where the magically minuscule Micro Machines live. In the completely connectable world of transforming Micro Machines playsets. Hundreds of vehicles in a whole wide world of connectable playsets. The original Micro Machines vehicles and playsets on separate.
Bring out the tiger. Bring out the tiger.
Tigers start their day with a great taste of Frosted Flakes, so they can be great. And you can try new Frosted Flakes with marshmallows, part of a complete breakfast.
I'm just gonna watch a video with you guys.
Here we are, a nation divided. Red, blue, 16% undecided. The 2020
You shall not.
So we gave the world another
You will not. Hey guys.
Saw a future
Well, I'm
of
average.
different
Cool.
societies.
I consider myself slightly above average
Of a world
in games.
are we?
Does your deodorant protect you?
Whatever her name, whatever his name is. But killer,
Transforms homes for those in need.
he's slightly better than me. Is that cool? I'm jealous.
48-hour freshness with triple action.
Remember, I'm the exact opposite of him. I'm his twin brother.
Time to play, drinking it after class milk. 3, 2, 1, blast milk. Full of calcium milk, make it number one milk. Twist milk, tough milk. How do you do? Cup milk, shuffle milk, shop milk. Question, got milk?
Yes, I have milk. I have a girlfriend. Yes, I just made that joke. I'm not gonna make any more jokes. That's forced ad. It's a forced ad. 700, yay.
Launch us when I give you the word. On your word, brother. I can't wait for you guys to see outside.
I hear outside is beautiful.
Then who? The lady. It's beautiful outside.
Which one do I need to upgrade?
I'm trepidatious.
Trevor, what?
It means scared.
Dude, nice word.
Did he
None
say,
of them.
Well,
What happens next? You can decide at goldfishfarm.com. Ask your parents' permission.
The snack that smiles back goldfish.
Bracelets on. Check my girls. Hell yeah.
This one I'm gonna connect to this.
New Twisty Girls from Twisty Pets. Turn them into
Alright.
bracelets.
Time to watch that retarded video that I want to watch.
Twisty Girls. Twisty Girls. Twisty Pets. Sold separately.
Whenever school happens, these are the new school rules. Wash hands for 20 seconds.
Hey,
Happy birthday, I think we better get from the top. Happy birthday to you.
Terrible scene.
100% juice.
No insurance? Aspen Dental has you covered with a free new patient exam and x-rays for relief when you need it most. And with your savings and safety secure, you'll feel all right smiling again. We promise. Book now at aspendental.com.
It's time for some Minecraft science, and the experiment that we're going to be doing today is a pretty simple one. I'm going to be travelling up things at various speeds, in the hope that I can work out what the fastest way to travel vertically in Minecraft is. Now, I have done this before in the past, but that was 5 years ago, and times change. We've got soul sand, we've got all sorts of new things introduced. I don't even think the Elytra existed when I did the original video. They didn't. That's made me feel incredibly old, so I think it's safe to assume that we're going to get some much faster times in today's video. Now, I do just want to mention that I haven't showcased every single vertical transportation method in this video because, well, I missed out on a bunch of the slow ones because the slow ones are quite boring, let's face it, and I also missed out on a few needlessly expensive or just impractical options that aren't really that quick. And yes, the horse cake staircase is included in that list because who in their right mind would want to build that in survival? Right. Number one is pillaring. I'm sure all of us have done it in Minecraft. I don't think there's a single player that hasn't done this, and I don't think there's a single player who has enjoyed the experience either. It's painfully slow. To cover the full 100 blocks, it took 50.5 seconds. That's a lot of time. So let's move on to another old school one, which is ladders. And it is marginally faster, but still not exciting and also not particularly fast. It took 42.5 seconds to go from the bottom all the way up to the top, and I died a little bit inside in the process of doing it. And I hate to say it, the next one isn't much more exciting either. We've got scaffolding. I thought it would be smart to test this one because it's a recent addition into the game, and I wanted to compare it against some of the other options, and it's not a good option. You know, it's just as slow as ladders, 42.5 seconds again, but you actually get less of a view. You can't see out quite as well, so it's arguably worse. I mean, the only positive is that, of course, it's 1 by 1 as opposed to 2 by 1, but still, if you want fast transport, don't look at scaffolding. So that's all the boring ones out of the way. And now this is where things begin to get interesting. Obviously in Minecraft 1.13, soul sand water elevators were introduced into the game, and let's face it, they're a ton of fun. And they feel pretty quick. And that's because they are pretty quick. It took me 9 seconds to cover the full 100 blocks, and there's something so satisfying about it. I don't know if it's the noise, or just the bubbles, or just the feeling of going fast in the water. It's great. But there is also something else that I really fancied trying, and that is launching an ender pearl into the water. You see, ender pearls can actually be transported by these water elevators, and I thought that would be a fun thing to test out, but it turns out it's actually way more dull because you just stood on the floor, and it's also much slower. It took 20.3 seconds for the ender pearl to travel the 100 blocks and for me to get teleported to the top. So it's not only slower, but also you need an ender pearl. This is kind of expensive. Right, now let's get fancy. As I'm sure most of you already know, I am a big fan of flying machines. I mean, just look at this. This is good fun. This is cool. I don't have to do anything. Redstone is pushing me upwards. I hate to say it, it's not doing it very fast. In fact, it only marginally beats pillaring. It's one of the slowest methods, taking 49.8 seconds to travel the full 100 blocks, and I think the 0.7 second difference between this and pillaring is due to the fact that when pillaring you have to kind of switch stacks, and that takes a little bit of time. That is the only advantage of the flying machine. But it does look cool though. In fact, this is another one that looks cool. I must admit, I had a bit of a heart attack when I realised that this design released in 2014. I remember when these things were all the rage, but this is the minecart slime block elevator, and it takes 7.9 seconds to transport you from the bottom to the top. 100 blocks, 7.9 seconds. It's our current leader. But maybe not for long. I mean, if we're going to talk about oldness of designs, this has got to be one of the oldest designs featured in the video. This has basically existed for as long as minecarts have existed, and it's been the kryptonite of elevator builders for years, because no matter how much cool stuff you do with this...
At Aspen Dental, smile for zero money down with zero worries. Plus pay zero interest if paid in full within 18 months.
Pistons, there seems to be no beating just right-clicking on successive minecarts. Now, I've employed a number of different methods here, so let's get started. Method number 1 was holding down the right-click button, and that took 4.7 seconds to travel 100 blocks. Already blisteringly quick. However, it gets faster, because if I spam the right-click button as fast as I possibly can, I manage to get 3.3 seconds to travel 100 blocks. I mean, that's basically breaking the sound barrier. But it gets quicker than that. Through cheating. I cheated a little bit, I installed a macro, and that right-clicks repeatedly, incredibly quickly, and that covered the distance in 2.5 seconds. 2.5 seconds? I mean, what? How can I compete with that? Well, you'll be happy to hear that I actually can compete with that. That's not the fastest method in this video. Next up, we've got nether portals. Now, I've had to employ 2 methods here because in creative mode, travelling through a nether portal is incredibly quick, whereas in survival mode, it's not so fast. In fact, it's so fast in creative mode that it almost rivals the minecart clicking elevator, taking 3.5 seconds to travel the full 100 blocks, but then that gets utterly destroyed in survival mode, 11.6 seconds. I mean, it's still quick, but it's not that great. However, one thing that you do have to keep in mind with nether portals is that one of these could be down at bedrock, and it could be right the way up at the build limit, and it would still be 11.6 seconds in survival mode. That's pretty lightning fast, actually. Anyway, moving swiftly on, we have got the method of choice for the Hermit file server, the Elytra with firework rockets, and it's for good reason. 3.5 seconds to cover the full 100 blocks. I have to say, I actually expected that to be slower. That is quick. The only slight downside in a situation like this is that it's really difficult to land on a platform. You end up flying past it and then flying back down, which does add to your time. And also, you need an Elytra, which is quite difficult to come by, and also you need a decent supply of firework rockets, which also could be quite tricky. So let's move on to a slightly more sustainable design, which is causing a massive explosion underneath your feet and launching yourself outwards. Wait, hang on, no, that uses tons of gunpowder. This is nowhere near as sustainable, but it is incredibly incredibly fun. Surprisingly though, not actually that fast. 5.4 seconds to launch you from the ground all the way up to the top. I mean, that's fast, and once you're moving, it's very fast. 0.4 seconds to do the actual trip, but the 5-second priming time is what kills you. Which actually reminds me, make sure that this doesn't kill you, okay, by using blast protection armor. That's the only way that you can deal with the explosion of 9 TNT right underneath your feet. Now, if you don't want to bother with collecting up all that gunpowder and you don't mind a little bit of cheatiness, then you can use this design right here. This uses 12 TNT duplicators to launch TNT up against this glass chamber. That TNT then drops down into the water, explodes, firing us upwards. It means that you can use it repeatedly without ever having to worry about refilling dispensers and collecting gunpowder and sand and things. And the good news is, it's pretty much just as fast as the dispenser-based design, taking 5.5 seconds to go from the bottom all the way up to the top. The extra 0.1 of a second is probably just the repeaters and the timings inside the redstone. Now, the only advice I can give if you want to build this up for yourself is potentially build it a little bit higher than I have. You see, when this thing activates, it tends to blow up its own minecarts, and that's a bit of a pain. Right, let's move on from that one and onto one that I had incredibly high hopes for. Dolphin's Grace with Demp Strider 3, Speed 2, and also Soul Sand Water Elevator. I mean, that combination I thought would just make me an absolute speed demon. And it didn't. In fact, it somehow managed to make me slower. It took 11.4 seconds for me to do the full Soul Sand Water Elevator when a regular Soul Sand Water Elevator takes just 9 seconds. How did I add 2.4 seconds by adding all the good stuff? I don't really know. My disappointment was immeasurable, but also incredibly short-lived, because I built one of these things. Okay, now this, there is no cheats involved with this. What? What? I travelled 100 blocks within the press of a button. Look, I'm there. I'm right there. Now, this is known as an Enderpearl stasis chamber. They've existed for quite some time, but they've gone a lot easier in Minecraft 1.16.2. Essentially, an Enderpearl is just bobbing up and down in water, and then when you make it hit something, such as a trapdoor, it will then teleport you there. So as long as you can send a redstone signal through loaded chunks into that thing, you can just teleport there immediately. 0.5 seconds to travel 100 blocks. And of course, it could be more than 100 blocks. You could go from bedrock to sky limit, 0.5 seconds. You could travel 400 blocks horizontally, 0.5 seconds. The only drawback is, if you die, then the Enderpearl unfortunately disappears, so it will stop working. I guess it's true what they say. There's no such thing as a free lunch. And they also say that every cloud has a silver lining, and that's definitely the case in Minecraft, because if clouds form and it starts raining, then you can whip out your Riptide 3 Trident, and you can launch yourself into the stratosphere. It takes 1.7 seconds to travel 100 blocks when you are flying just using Trident power. That's silly. But you also can't just rely on rain at all times. I mean, imagine how annoying that would be if your only method of transportation was waiting for it to rain and then flying up there. No, that's not going to work. However, the Riptide 3 Trident is still incredibly useful, because if you fire an Enderpearl just as you fly out the water, that Enderpearl is going to go far. Incredibly far. And if you make that hit something and then have a mechanism to catch you, you can travel 100 blocks in 1.6 seconds. 1.6 seconds! And it's repeatable, and it's reliable, and it's not going to stop working if you die, and it's not ugly. Look, you've just got the thing at the top,